Absolutely. Here's an expanded version of Trust the Timing of Your Life in 600 words. In life, we are constantly in a rush. We want things to happen quickly, to see the results of our hard work almost instantly. We look around and see others succeeding, moving forward, and it's easy to think that we are falling behind. But one thing I've learned in my own journey is that life has its own rhythm, and it will unfold exactly when it is meant to. There was a time in my life when I thought I knew exactly what I wanted. I was young, ambitious, and determined to make a name for myself. Like many of us, I had a plan, and I was convinced that everything had to go according to that plan. I wanted to win Miss World. I wanted to be a successful actor. I wanted to be a global star. The list was long and my expectations were high, but as life often does, it had a different timeline in mind. After winning Miss World in 2000, I thought I was going to jump straight into Bollywood stardom. I thought everything would fall into place easily, but that wasn't the case. There were setbacks. There were rejections. There were moments when I doubted myself, when I questioned if my dreams were just too big. I remember feeling like the opportunities weren't coming as quickly as I had hoped. I'd worked tirelessly on a project only for it to fail, or I'd put my heart into a role and not get the recognition I felt I deserved. I couldn't understand why things weren't happening at the pace I wanted. It was hard. But looking back, I realized those moments of struggle, those times of uncertainty, were all part of the process. One of the hardest things to accept in life is that we don't always control the timing. We might not know why things are happening when they do, or why they don't seem to be happening at all. But the truth is, God's timing is always perfect. The doors that closed at that time, the rejections that seemed so personal, they were all setting me up for the next step in my journey. If I had jumped into Hollywood or global fame too early, I may not have been ready for the challenges that came with it. Life's timing is about preparation, not just opportunity. I learned to trust that each season of my life, whether it seemed challenging or rewarding, was contributing to who I was becoming. I had to embrace the fact that there was no shortcut to success. There was no immediate path to the top that didn't come with its own struggles, failures, and lessons. And trust me, the lessons you learn during the hard times will stay with you longer than the successes. They build resilience, strength, and a deeper understanding of who you are. For years, I had to remind myself that everything happens for a reason, even when it doesn't seem like it at the time. The more I accepted the timing of my life, the more I could appreciate the journey. Sometimes when life slows down or doesn't move at the pace you want it to, it's because you are being prepared for something greater. Something that might require you to be a little stronger, a little wiser, a little more patient. I think the most important thing to remember when you're facing uncertainty is to have faith in the process. Trust that your path is being laid out for you step by step. Your dreams are valid, your ambitions are worth pursuing, but they will come at the right time, not the time you think they should. The timing of your life is a gift, and when you accept it, you begin to see things unfold with more clarity. So, when things don't happen when you expect them to, or when life feels like it's moving too slowly, take a deep breath. Trust the timing of your life. Believe that everything is happening exactly as it should. And when the right time comes, you'll be ready for it. Let me know if you'd like any further adjustments. Failure is often seen as something negative, something to be avoided at all costs. We're taught from a young age that success is the goal, that failure is something to be ashamed of. But as I've walked my own journey, I've come to understand that failure isn't the end, it's simply a detour, a redirection on the path to something greater. When I first entered the entertainment industry, I was full of hope and excitement. I had big dreams of being a successful actress, a role model for young girls, and a voice for those who felt unheard. But like many people who pursue a dream, I faced rejection. I faced it a lot. There were roles I auditioned for and didn't get, projects I worked hard on that didn't make the impact I had hoped for, and moments where I doubted my own abilities. In those moments, it would have been so easy to give up, to think that maybe I wasn't cut out for this, that perhaps the universe was telling me to walk away. But that's when I learned the powerful lesson that failure is not an end, it's simply redirection. In those moments of disappointment, I didn't give up. Instead, I took a step back and reassessed. I asked myself, what's the lesson here? What am I being taught? That's when I realized that failure wasn't a reflection of my worth or abilities. It was simply life nudging me in another direction. It was the universe or God telling me that there was something better out there for me, but I had to be patient and stay open to what was next. I remember when I was first told that I wasn't right for a role, and it crushed me. It made me question my skills, my talent, my future. But after taking time to reflect, I realized that perhaps that role wasn't the one I was meant for, and I didn't need to force it. Instead, it was about trusting that the right opportunity would come along when the time was right. And it did. The next role I got was the one that changed everything for me. It was a role that allowed me to showcase my true abilities, one that gave me a platform to speak up and tell stories that mattered. That failure, that rejection, pushed me to look within and find the strength to keep going. Failure has a way of showing us our true potential. When things don't go as planned, it forces us to stop and think. It challenges us to reimagine what success looks like. Sometimes the most important lessons come from the moments we fail because they teach us resilience, humility, and patience. I've learned that failing is just part of the process. It's not a reflection of who you are, but rather an invitation to grow. When things don't go as you expect, it doesn't mean you're not good enough. It just means you're being guided towards something that aligns better with your path, your purpose. There were many times in my career when things didn't go the way I envisioned, but every time I picked myself up, I found a new sense of direction. I've failed and I've succeeded, but both have played their part in shaping the person I am today. The key is to never see failure as a defeat, but as a necessary part of the journey. Every failure is an opportunity to learn, to improve, and to move closer to the version of yourself that you are meant to be. The most important thing to remember is that failure is never the end, it's a redirection. It's not about how many times you fall, but how many times you get back up. Life doesn't expect us to be perfect, and neither should we. It expects us to grow, to learn, and to trust that every setback is simply a signpost pointing us towards something better. Embrace failure, learn from it, and know that it's just part of the process that will ultimately lead you to success. In a world that often measures success by external achievements, wealth, fame, status, it's easy to lose sight of what truly matters. We're constantly chasing after the next big goal, the next promotion, the next award, thinking that once we reach that milestone, we'll feel fulfilled. But as I've experienced in my own life, true fulfillment doesn't come from success alone, it comes from purpose. When I first began my career in entertainment, I was driven by the idea of success. I wanted to be recognized, I wanted to make a name for myself, and I wanted to prove my worth to the world. I thought that success was the ultimate prize, and I worked tirelessly toward it. I was focused on climbing the ladder, on becoming the best at what I did, and yes, on getting the applause and recognition that came with it. But as I achieved those outward markers of success, winning awards, being in the spotlight, reaching millions of people, I began to realize that something was missing. It wasn't that I wasn't grateful for the success I had achieved, it was that success, in and of itself, didn't provide the lasting satisfaction I thought it would. There is a difference between being successful and living with purpose. Success is often tied to what others can see, the accolades, the material achievements, the public approval. But purpose is something deeper. It's about living in alignment with who you truly are, with what you believe in, and with the legacy you want to leave behind. Purpose isn't about impressing others, it's about making a real, meaningful impact, no matter how big or small. As I progressed in my career, I started to ask myself, what do I want my life to stand for? I realized that success, if not anchored in purpose, could feel hollow. I began to shift my focus from just achieving outward success to also thinking about the difference I wanted to make. I realized that my platform wasn't just for my own benefit, it was an opportunity to create change, to raise awareness, and to inspire others. That's when I fully embraced my role as a UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador and began using my voice to advocate for children's rights and education. It became clear to me that my real success wasn't just in the roles I played on screen, but in the work I did off screen to make the world a better place. Purpose gives meaning to everything we do. When your work is connected to something bigger than yourself, when it's about contributing to the well-being of others or leaving a positive mark on the world, it changes the way you approach life. Success on its own may give you temporary pleasure, but purpose brings lasting fulfillment. It aligns your actions with your values, making each step you take more meaningful, no matter how challenging or uncertain the path may be. When you live with purpose, you don't measure your worth by the number of awards or accolades you receive, but by the difference you make in people's lives. The real magic happens when success and purpose align. That's when life feels complete. When I was able to intertwine my passion for acting with my passion for making a difference, I found true joy. I no longer saw success as the end goal. Instead, I saw it as a tool to amplify my purpose. Success became the platform and purpose became the mission. When your work is driven by a sense of purpose, it empowers you to keep going even when things get tough, because you know that what you're doing matters. I've learned that it's not about how many accolades you receive or how much recognition you get. It's about whether you've lived authentically, with integrity, and in service to something greater than yourself. The people you impact, the lives you touch, the change you help bring about, that is the true measure of success. Purpose is what makes success meaningful. So I encourage you to ask yourself, as I did, what is my purpose? What difference do I want to make? And how can I align my success with that purpose? Because when you live with purpose, success will follow, but more importantly, it will be a success that feels true to who you are and what you stand for. In today's world, we are constantly surrounded by noise, opinions, judgments, expectations, and distractions. It feels like everyone has something to say about who we should be, what we should do, and where we should go. The pressure to conform, to meet societal standards, and to live up to the expectations of others can be overwhelming. The noise of the world often drowns out our own thoughts, desires, and instincts, making it difficult to hear our true selves. But in my own experience, I've learned that the most important voice to listen to is the one inside of you. When I first started in the entertainment industry, I was constantly bombarded by outside opinions. People told me what roles I should take, how I should present myself, and how I should speak. Everyone seemed to have advice on how to navigate my career, how to handle my public image, and how to fit into the mold of a typical actress. It was a confusing time because while I appreciated the advice, I also felt lost. I didn't know who I was supposed to be, and I didn't know whether I should follow my own intuition or listen to the external voices that surrounded me. There was a point when I realized that living according to everyone else's expectations wasn't going to bring me peace or fulfillment. I realized that if I kept listening to the noise and allowing it to dictate my decisions, I would never truly know who I was or what I wanted. I began to understand that the only way to find true happiness and success was to listen to my own inner voice, the one that had been drowned out by the opinions of others for so long. We all have that inner voice. It's the quiet whisper that tells us what feels right, what feels authentic. It's the gut feeling we get when we know we're making the right decision or when we feel uneasy about something that doesn't align with our values. Unfortunately, we often ignore it because it's not always loud or immediate. The world's noise tends to overshadow it, but if we take a moment to tune out everything around us, we can hear it more clearly. The key is to silence the noise, whether it's from other people or from the constant distractions of life, and listen to what our inner voice is telling us. Listening to your inner voice requires trust. It's about trusting yourself and your instincts, even when it doesn't make logical sense or when others don't understand your choices. When I made the decision to step away from Bollywood and pursue a career in Hollywood, I was met with doubt and criticism. People told me I was taking a huge risk, that I was leaving a successful career for something uncertain. But deep inside, I knew it was the right move for me. I knew I had a bigger purpose to fulfill, and I needed to follow my instincts, even if it meant stepping into the unknown. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when the noise of doubt from others crept in. But I reminded myself that only I knew what was right for me, and I had to trust my own judgment. That decision led me to new opportunities, new challenges, and ultimately to a place where I felt more aligned with who I was meant to be. Every step I took after that was a testament to the power of listening to my own voice over the noise of others. Listening to your inner voice also requires self-awareness. It's important to spend time getting to know yourself, your values, your passions, and your purpose. In a world that constantly tells you who you should be, it's easy to lose sight of your own identity. But when you take the time to reflect and listen to your heart, you begin to understand what truly matters to you. You begin to see the path that is meant for you, not the one that others think you should walk. The noise will always be there. People will always have opinions, and distractions will continue to surround us. But the power lies in our ability to turn down the volume on all of that and to focus on what is coming from within. Your inner voice is your compass, guiding you toward the life you are meant to live. When you learn to silence the noise and listen to yourself, you begin to live a life that is true to who you are, one that is authentic, purposeful, and fulfilling. So I encourage you to take a step back, quiet the world around you, trust in your inner voice, and let it lead you. It's the only voice that knows the real you, the one that has your best interests at heart, and the one that will always guide you toward your truest self. In a world where we are constantly encouraged to focus on our own needs, desires, and ambitions, it's easy to forget the profound impact of giving. We often hear the phrase, "you get what you give," but how many of us truly embrace that concept in our daily lives? We live in a society that measures success by what we can accumulate: wealth, fame, possessions, and sometimes it's easy to get caught up in the idea that success means taking as much as we can for ourselves. However, true fulfillment comes not from what we take, but from what we give. Over the years, I've come to realize that the greatest moments of joy in my life haven't come from receiving or achieving. They've come from giving, whether it's giving my time, my resources, my love, or my support to others. The act of giving doesn't just impact those we give to, it transforms us in ways we cannot predict. When I reflect on my own journey, I see that the moments when I was most fulfilled were often those when I put the needs of others before my own, when I focused on making a positive difference in the world rather than just accumulating success for myself. At the beginning of my career, I was driven by the need for recognition. I wanted to be noticed. I wanted my hard work to be acknowledged. But as I began to grow, both personally and professionally, I realized that the more I gave, the more I received, not in material wealth, but in deeper connections and a stronger sense of purpose. I wasn't just looking for success in terms of box office hits or awards, but I was looking for meaning in the work I did. When I joined UNICEF as a Goodwill Ambassador, I entered a world far removed from the glitz and glamour of the entertainment industry. I met children in need, women fighting for their rights, and communities struggling for access to basic necessities. The challenges were immense, but the rewards were far greater than any award I could have won. Giving my time, my voice, and my platform to these causes gave me a sense of purpose that no amount of success could provide. The more I became involved, the more I understood that life is about sharing what we have, whether it's our resources, our talents, or simply our time and attention. The smallest acts of kindness, whether it's volunteering, donating, or just offering a helping hand, have a ripple effect that extends far beyond what we can see. Giving doesn't have to be grand or extraordinary. It's often the simplest things that make the most difference. A smile to someone who's struggling, a word of encouragement when someone feels down, or a gesture of kindness when you see someone in need. These are the moments that truly count. We often underestimate the power of small acts of generosity, but they accumulate and create a world that is kinder, more compassionate, and more connected. One of the greatest lessons I've learned is that giving doesn't always mean giving something tangible. It can also mean giving of ourselves, our attention, our energy, and our love. In an era where so much of our lives are spent behind screens, it's easy to forget the importance of human connection. Taking the time to really listen to someone, to be present for them, is one of the most valuable things you can give. These moments may seem fleeting, but the impact they have on both you and the other person can last a lifetime. As I look back on my journey, I see that giving is not just a transaction, it's a way of life. It's about shifting our mindset from what can I get to how can I help and how can I contribute. Giving doesn't diminish us, it enriches us. It opens our hearts and minds to new possibilities and connects us to others in ways that are far more fulfilling than anything we can accumulate. When you give more than you take, you create a life of abundance, not in terms of material wealth, but in terms of love, connection, and meaning. And this is the kind of wealth that sustains us through the challenges of life, that keeps us grounded in our purpose, and that ultimately brings the most joy. So, as you continue on your own journey, remember that giving isn't just about charity or philanthropy. It's about living a life that adds value to the lives of others. Whether big or small, every act of giving enriches the world and creates a ripple of goodness that comes back to you in ways you never imagined. The more we give, the more we receive, not just in material terms, but in the satisfaction of knowing we've made a difference. And in the end, that's the true measure of success. Life is full of unexpected twists and turns. Sometimes the path ahead seems clear, and other times it feels like we're walking through the darkness, unsure of where to go. There are moments when everything seems to be going wrong, when obstacles pile up, and when it feels like all hope is lost. In these times, it's easy to feel stuck, to become overwhelmed by uncertainty and fear. But I've learned that the key to moving forward, even in the darkest of times, is simply to keep going. When I think about the difficult times in my life, I realize that they weren't the end of my story. They were simply chapters that challenged me to dig deeper, to find my strength, and to trust in the journey. I faced rejection, disappointment, and failure, just like many of us. In those moments, it would have been easy to give up, to walk away, and to let the darkness swallow me. But I've learned that the moment you stop moving forward is the moment you stop growing. There was a time in my career when things weren't going as planned. I had faced a string of rejections, and I found myself questioning if I was on the right path. It was a challenging time, filled with self-doubt. I remember thinking, what if I'm not meant for this? But despite the fear, I kept showing up. I kept auditioning, kept working, and kept pushing myself to improve. I knew that no matter how difficult the journey was, the only way out of the darkness was through it. Even when I couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel, I knew I had to keep moving forward. Sometimes life throws us curveballs that we don't expect, personal challenges, loss, or difficult decisions, and it can feel like the world is against us. During those times, it's natural to feel discouraged and question everything. I've been there. But what I've learned is that every struggle is an opportunity to grow. It's in those moments of darkness that we find out what we're truly made of. The strength we need to keep moving forward isn't always something we realize we have until we need it most. In my own experience, the darkest times were often the ones that shaped me the most. They taught me resilience, patience, and the importance of trusting the process. The journey may not always be easy and the path may be unclear, but it's important to keep moving, even when it feels like you're walking in the dark. Progress doesn't always have to be immediate or visible. Sometimes it's about taking one small step at a time and having faith that eventually things will fall into place. The key is to remember that darkness is only temporary. It's not permanent, and it's not an indication of failure, it's a part of the journey. Just like the night gives way to the dawn, difficult times eventually lead to better days. The darkness you're facing now may be preparing you for something greater, even if you can't see it yet. Trust that every step forward, no matter how small, is taking you closer to where you're meant to be. In those moments when the way forward seems unclear, it's important to lean on your inner strength and trust in the process. Keep moving forward because every step counts, even when it feels like you're standing still. Even when the future feels uncertain, trust that by continuing to move, you are creating momentum that will eventually lead you to a place of light. The darkness doesn't define you, it's simply a part of your story, a chapter in the book of your life. So when life feels hard, when you feel like you're walking in circles, or when the road ahead seems impossible to navigate, remember that the only way through is forward. Keep going one step at a time. The darkness will eventually give way to light, and when it does, you'll realize that the strength you gained by moving through it made you stronger than you ever imagined. And the journey that once seemed so difficult will become a story of resilience, perseverance, and triumph.